Still haven't figured out how to streaming live on YouTube. Let me just confirm I see it on my end. Don't see it on my end yet, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. There you are. Zoom YouTube broadcast. Still haven't figured out how to live on YouTube. There we are. Confirm I see it on my end. All right, we are probably about a 10-second delay. Let me just get to that link. And hey guys, I'm sending the new link here. Okay, so Phil, you wanted to while I configure all this stuff, let you talk amongst yourselves. You can start the live. Hey everyone, welcome to the live stream. So today we are going to be discussing. Rafi found an article on something strange is going on in the bowels of the monetary system. And then we're going to be discussing logic versus empiricism in monetary theory, and why people who use the empirical method are probably missing something, and it's going to lead to bad results for them. And finally, we're going to end our discussion of what happens if gold rains down from the sky and the price collapses back down to $35 an ounce. All right, so where is the where's the okay, I'm just gonna we're live. Okay. We're live. Okay, so cool. So I saw this article. It was actually sent to me by a subscriber. And we're going to share a screen in a second, and I'll explain what I can. Basically, we're seeing the first signs of something serious happening in the monetary sewers. And that article is over here. Sharing screen now. So the interbank lending rate jumped by like 6 bips, I think, basis points. Yeah. Which is not, I mean, that's a very small bip or bump, but apparently it's a big deal. Right. Okay. So we have this, we see the article here. So yes. It says something strange is happening in the financial plumbing under Wall Street. And we have a picture of a guy, I think he's from the Fed. He's going down into the sewers. Reminds me of that. Hold on, Rafi. I think we might be on a private video. Uh-oh. Okay. Hold on. I see no chat, and it said comments are not allowed on a private video. 83 are watching. Okay, no, we are in a public video. We're good. Okay. Sorry about that. I just don't see chat. I don't know why there's no chat. There we go. We got chat now. I see a chat. Okay, we're good. Okay. Continue. Everything's good. So, there is a picture of a sewer here and a guy going down into the sewer. I think he's from the Fed, and I don't know what he's going to do there. But since I couldn't read this whole article on MarketWatch because it wanted me to subscribe, and I don't want to subscribe, so I went to the archive and I found it. So December 7th. And we have here the first line: something strange is happening in the financial plumbing that makes Wall Street, and by extension, the global economy, function. So it talks about something called sponsored repo. And from what I can decode from this piece is that sponsored repo is instead of one bank lending cash to another bank that gives it treasuries in return, there is a central clearinghouse of banks that basically clears repo transactions between banks, just like a clearinghouse. If somebody sends, if X sends Y $100, but Y already owes X $30, so then the clearinghouse will clear that, cancel it out, and then you only send $70 instead of the 100. So it makes sending money a lot more efficient. That's what the ACH clearinghouse essentially is, right? So it allows much less dollar units to move to clear all of the payments that would be made that day. And this makes finance more efficient. So a repo transaction, instead of one bank lending to another bank, they would use the central clearing, and then the central clearing has it's more efficient that way to do these repo transactions. So you need less dollars to actually clear everything in the plumbing of the system, right? So something is happening in central clearing, and I had to look into this. we're going to go into it was the one paragraph I wanted to read from this article. It was really confusing. Where was it? It was right. Okay, so it says what's next here. So while Friday's spike, the secured overnight financing rate, basically the rate at which somebody borrows cash in exchange for the collateral that they give, rose 6 basis points, right? And then everyone's like, oh, is that going to be like September 2019 when there was a repocalypse and rates spiked up to 10%, and on the repo rate it spiked up to like 5.5% when the repo rate before that, the day before that, was like less than 1, something like that. So it says what Friday's spike has already faded. Nomura's Plants says he expects this won't be the last time it happens. He expects to see more volatility in financing markets as the Fed's shrinking of its balance sheet leaves treasury dealers stuffed with collateral. So what does that last sentence mean? It means that volatility in financing markets, the Fed's shrinking of its balance sheet, meaning it is selling securities, taking dollars in exchange for those securities that it's putting out into the market, and then is retiring that cash. So there's less money in the system. That's what happens when the Fed shrinks its balance sheet. There's fewer dollars circulating, right? That's being canceled out by reverse repo now, but that's a different issue. And now treasury dealers are stuffed with collateral meaning treasuries, because the Fed is selling those treasuries and the dealers have to take it up. So we're in a situation where there's more and more collateral in the system and not enough cash. And now I noticed this, and Phil, you'll add in what you were able to figure out from this, after I finish my rant here. So I looked in the primer on sponsored repo, this clearinghouse repo where there's a central clearer. And when did it start? Now I asked ChatGPT, when did central clearing start for repo? And it said there is no single date where it started. I don't know if it's lying to me or trying to screw things up, but it got popular, or it started being used at wholesale around April 2019 when JP Morgan released this primer on sponsored repo to explain it to its clients and how to use it. So JP Morgan is one of these clearinghouses. And we know this started on April, let's say April 2019. The Repocalypse was September 2019. So this does not prevent these accidents from happening, right? They would imagine that it would, because it makes it more efficient. But still, if there is not enough cash and there's too much treasuries, the repo market is not going to work at some point. And we don't know exactly when that point is. But if we look at this over here, right, this chart, let's move our heads away. It's in the way here. And this is, I showed this on I think the Silver Report on Arcadia Economics on Friday. I think I showed this, but we can go through it here live, or I can mouse over and you can see exactly what happens. So the blue is the SOFR, basically the repo rate between banks or with clearinghouses or whatever. And we see here that in 2019, this is when 2019 was when the QT, the original QT from after QE3, right? When the balance sheet was about 4.5 trillion, and then it started shrinking and shrinking and shrinking until we get to September 2019, and then this thing happened. This spike here. This, what is that? Blue?
Is that the Repocalypse?
Yes, this is the Repocalypse right here, right? And now, if there's another thing that happened at the year-end turn, right? So I'm mousing over the year-end turn, January 3rd, 2019 here. So at the year-end, there's like a huge spike in repo demand, because banks are settling their balance sheets for the year, and they're filing their taxes or whatever they have to do. Exactly why this happens, I can't give you the exact explanation. I'm not an expert in this stuff. You'd have to ask Jamie Dimon. But what I did notice is that whenever there's a spike in the repo rate, right, there's also the volume of the repo market moves higher and higher and higher, leading into that spike. That's exactly what we saw in 2019. So we saw this black line over here. I mouse out of the way. The black line goes higher and higher and higher, and you see a spike right there. And then the Fed does something, and then the volume goes down. And we're seeing that again here. The black line goes higher and higher and higher and higher, trends higher until bam, there's like a crisis, and then there's a spike in the repo rate. And this is the Repocalypse over here. It went to 5.25. The day before it was 2.2. Okay, that's a huge spike. And then we see the same thing leading up to 2020, right? See another spike in volume going to still new record highs. And then there's the the lockdowns, or it could have been a financial crisis covered up by lockdowns. I don't really know. It depends how conspiratorial you want to get. I don't really want to go into that because I don't have any coherent theory as to what exactly was happening. I just know it was all bad. And now I'm noticing that we're seeing again a huge spike in the volume, right? The black line. The black line is trending higher and higher and higher, and it's going to crazy new highs at 1850. And now if you go to the table here, to the volume column, my face is still in the way of this thing. So we see here that we spiked is on November 30th was the biggest volume, right? We were trading around 1.5 trillion, 1.6 trillion over here, 1.6 trillion down on November 15th. And we stay in that zone until November 30th, when suddenly we spike to 1.85 trillion. Then it goes down a little bit, but now it's coming back up to 1.8 trillion here on December 5th. And we're still at 1.7 trillion. So there's still some kind of stress in the repo market. And that's really what I wanted to share. Like, I don't know exactly what is going on, but it's enough to get people at, Market Watch and Wall Street Journal to try to write an article about it, an article that no one's going to understand. And not even the bankers really understand this. It's not like that.
The stories are always like, something's going on, but don't worry too much about it. Like, it'll be all right.
Yeah. Okay. So Phil, what do you understand from any of this?
So what I read was in the I don't know if you want to share the screen again, but there's a paragraph in the matchbook repo trade. A dealer would borrow from a cash-rich lender, such as a money market fund, and then lend those proceeds to a cash-rich borrower, such as a hedge fund. Did they mean to say cash poor? Because why would if they're both cash rich, then why do they need cash?
So this is not a sponsored. They're trying to compare matchbook with sponsored. So the last sentence here is, as explained in this primer from JP Morgan, a sponsored repo transaction sees the Fixed Income Clearing Corporation, a clearinghouse, intermediate both sides of the trade, which allows dealers to net the transactions off against each other.
Okay, so if
for example,
yeah, go ahead.
No.
Sounds like, and maybe you're going to tell me I'm wrong. This sounds like they're both like, if I let's say I close out my balance sheet for the day, and I say I have this amount of dollars and this amount of treasuries, and then after I close it out, I give it to you, and then I give you a certain amount of money and treasuries, and then you record those on your balance sheet. Like, it sounds like we're both recording the cash and the treasuries on our balance sheet at the same time.
Would be that.
That's what it sounds like to me. I'm only basing it off these two paragraphs right here, as explained in the primer from JP Morgan. A sponsored repo transaction sees the Fixed Income Clearing Corp, a clearinghouse, intermediate both sides of the trade, which allows dealers to net the transactions off against each other. What are they netting?
Well,
maybe this is the part where you said the $100 and the $30, and then they net them and just send the $70.
Yeah, well, that's what a clearinghouse does.
Okay. So maybe they're not. Now, in my defense, you sent this to me an hour ago.
Yeah.
Hanging up, and we're like, get ready to talk about this, Phil. So, but my first instinct was that reading that paragraph was that they were both recording the bonds and the cash. I mean, they do it all the time. It's fractional reserve banking. So, but okay, so maybe they're not. Maybe that's not a Schrodinger's dollar there.
Yeah. Well, okay. So here's JP Morgan in its primer, right, that it published in 2019, explains this, and this thing looks really scary. You have this is a sponsored repo, because you have the sponsored reverse repo and the sponsored repo on both sides of it, and in the middle you have the sponsoring member and a Fixed Income Clearing Corporation. This is the clearinghouse on both sides. You have basically money moving in all directions. Look, I'm going to try to simplify it by explaining, like, just plumbing. When a city grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's more and more sewage that they've got to get rid of and move, you don't want these tiny little septic tanks all over the city. That's going to be very inefficient. So you
Or
create this
pipes moving
giant,
in opposite directions and trying to
yeah,
force each other.
right? You get these, so instead you get this giant sewer of the whole city's sewage being cleared out and then moving into the ocean or wherever it moves to, or being treated in bacterially or something. That makes it more efficient, but then again, it creates a giant weak point for the entire sewage system. That, you know, if you have a bunch of septic tanks in a city, then if one of them breaks, everyone else is fine. You have to deal with your septic tank problem.
Yeah.
But if you have a giant clearinghouse of all the sewage in the city, if something goes wrong with that, nobody can flush the toilet, and the whole city gets clogged with shit.
or worse, it's a reverse flow, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's like every toilet gets clogged at the same
And it
time.
starts overflowing at the same time.
Right. So that's what would happen if something goes wrong with this sponsored repo, which admittedly I can't really explain exactly what is going on, and I doubt many people can.
Yeah, I was gonna say these things get so like big that there's like no one. This is where we were talking about the last time, the emergent order. Like this is an emergent order property, and it's not like there's a Rothschild in charge of the reverse repo. Well, maybe there is nominally, but it's not like he's sitting there like, you know, dance puppets dance. It's just, this is like someone needs treasury, someone needs dollars. They're flipping back and forth. I still think there's something going on with double entry, not double entry bookkeeping. What I think the books are being cooked somewhere along the line, and that's going to be exposed at some point.
Mm-hmm. So then specifically what I'm looking forward to is what's going to happen at the end of the year, right? If the volume, meaning, look, it's just basic counting. It's arithmetic. Look, if the volume of cash in the overnight repo market is increasing and it's at 1.7, 1.8 trillion now, but the number of dollars in the banking system is falling because the Fed is liquidating its balance sheet and taking in that cash and taking it out of existence, then at a certain point you're going to reach a failure where there's not enough cash to clear all of these repo transactions. Even if you're having them centrally cleared and canceling out, at a certain point it's going to blow up, which is what happened in 2019, and it's going to happen again. And when it does, the Fed is going to have to act immediately, which is exactly what it did on September 20th, 2019. And I think it started issuing repos on itself. Like if you look at the Fed's chart of repos, they're at basically zero, but that doesn't mean that there's zero repos going on. It just means there's zero repos going on from the Fed. There's plenty of repos going on between banks using clearinghouses with each other. And when that cash runs out, they're going to have to go to the Fed for repos, or the repo rate is going to explode up to what would be 10% now, right? It exploded up to 5% last time when rates were like 2.2%. You know, that was as high as the Fed could hike at that point, and then they started to cut again. So we're going to see the same thing. Fed rates are going to rise. Overnight rates are going to rise like 10, 15, 20% maybe. And the Fed's going to move in, NQT, and then the whole thing's going to start over again, and gold's going to explode. And this is one of the things I warned about. You know, Phil, you're an Endgame investor subscriber, so you can attest to this, that when gold hit a new high at 2150 that night, you know, my next EGI report was like, let's not get too excited about this because the Fed has not started printing yet.
Yeah,
so
this
could just be like gold getting ready to move, and it has the potential to do it, but it's not going to. This is a monetary phenomenon. It's not people deciding that they want to pay more money for gold. You know, it's banks that are running out of money, and gold is involved because gold is the other side of the dollar, just by regression theory logic. Exactly how that works, hard to describe. Anything to add on this?
Yeah. Well,
point?
I do have a question. When the money, what I expect to see when the money runs dry is a deflationary, at least the start of a deflationary crash. So I would expect gold and silver, especially silver, to plummet during that point. I think gold should go down slower than just about anything else. I mean, this is gonna be a pan sell-off. Yeah. If let's say the Fed, you know, let's say Powell blinks, you know, he's talking big game now, but let's say he blinks and prints $8 trillion. It takes time for that credit to get out. So how long how long do you think the deflationary portion would last before the 8 trillion, blows out into the system and starts the party again?
Well,
Because you're gonna have a bunch of people writing you being like, you told me to buy a bunch of gold and silver and it's $4 an ounce.
Well, look, we can look to 2020 to see what happened. Right, in 2020, gold did fall, but it fell the slowest of all commodities. It fell the slowest of anything. Right, it fell from I think the bottom was 1450. Right, and what was I can check the chart to see exactly what was happening, but it's basically a blip on the chart now, and you can't really even see it on a long-term chart. But it was freaking everyone out. It was freaking me out, and but I knew it was temporary, and that was the day that I did some serious buying of gold and gold stocks.
Yeah, obviously I would buy it, but
no, it was a terrifying day to buy, but I did it anyway, and I was having heart palpitations. I was like, I'm sure this is right. It just feels really scary, right?
Yes, absolutely. Everyone watching right now, like your nerves are going to be tested like you wouldn't believe during that brief period.
Yeah, which is why you cannot have leverage. You're not going to survive this with leverage. You'll have a hard time surviving it even without leverage. Yeah. Right, and you'll have a much easier time surviving it if you have extra cash that you'll be able to deploy if you need to. So here, I'm going to share the screen here.
But I'll tell the viewers now. I would not be terribly surprised if we briefly saw $4 an ounce for silver, something to crash that.
That's pretty extreme.
I said I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if it like spiked down really hard, especially if Powell holds the line. Because Powell doesn't want to be the guy to go into a hyperinflation, right? So he's going to try and hold the line as long as he absolutely can. And maybe they got to get rid of him and put in somebody, a modern monetary theorist. So if that takes time, then I could see a deflationary crash easily.
Okay, so by the way, if Powell holds the line, it's not going to be for more than a day or two. Like he might do it initially, but then he'll either get fired or
that's what I'm saying,
or something. I'm not calling for violence. I don't know what's gonna happen. Okay, so here's gold. Here's gold in March 2020. So we see here March 2nd, 2020. Everyone was COVIDing and there's a China virus. What do we do? And then and then we see a high here of 1704, March 9th, 2020. The next week we see a low of 1451. Okay, so 1704 to 1451 in the space of a week. What's the percentage move on that? I can open up a calculator, but it's let's see. Anybody know?
Keep in mind, the viewers are all calling me insane. We're entering like into quantum economics where like these weird edge case scenarios happen. So you can see like things just swing very wildly in one direction or the other. So I'm just using that as a intellectual exercise and just to prepare yourself. So if it does fall hypothetically to $4, that doesn't mean Rafi and I were wrong and we're fools and you should get out while you can. I'm saying this is a theoretical possibility. Our logic is pure. Hold the line. We're going to get into logic versus empiricism right now. So
yeah. Wait, so it's a good segue for explaining logic versus empiricism. So. Hold on. So I did the calculation. Gold went down in a week, 15%. Right. That's okay. It's a big move, but it's nothing compared to like oil, right? Oil went from like $100 a barrel. No, it was to negative 35. Okay. So it's well, if I were to tell you at any other point before March 2020 that oil is going to move from whatever $70-$80 a barrel, whatever it was, to negative 35 in a week, like you'd also call me insane, but it happened. And so at this point, what could happen to gold? It could go down. I don't know if it went down 15%. If Powell holds the line for 2 or 3 days, it could go down 20%. Okay, I don't think it's going to go down more than that. But if that happens, then silver could go down maybe 60-70% for a few days, but that's it. And again, I'm not predicting this, but you have to be emotionally ready for this to happen. And this is the segue to logic versus empiricism, because this is a game of logic, and gravity pulls down. That doesn't mean that you can't have situations where where it feels like you're falling up. Like if you're in a collapsing elevator, right? You'll stick to the ceiling, and you won't. It'll be the opposite. It'll be like opposite gravity, but there's still gravity on the elevator.
And birds do not have anti-grav devices on them. Like they're not defying. I mean, they are technically, I guess they're empirically they are defying gravity, but it's not because they have a field around them that it's anti-grav. It's because they're generating enough energy to overwhelm gravity.
Right. And when you're in a collapsing elevator, there's still gravity in the elevator. It's just being canceled out by the fact the elevator is collapsing.
Yeah. It makes sense. The reason I brought this up is because you'd see, like whenever I talk to normal people and I try to explain gold as money, they're like, well, you can't buy anything with gold. You have to turn it into dollars first. I mean, you can, but it's going to be inefficient, right? You're not going to get, you might be able to buy $1,800 worth of men's suit for a $2,000 coin, something like that. He's going to want a premium to even take the gold because he doesn't have anywhere to keep it. He's going to be worried about theft. There's a lot of reasons for that, right? And same with silver, right? You have to, most corporations will not take silver. I've tried. You have to go to independent farmers or independent, operators to try, but they will take silver. I've tried that, and independent people will take silver. But you have to convert it, and it doesn't feel like money. Dollars feel like money. You go and you spend the dollars, you earn the dollars, right? So empirically, it looks like gold and silver are these relics of the past, and this new pure detached from the dollar fiat currency is based on the industrial output of America, is what we're all using for money, right? So that must be the money because we've all agreed that it is the money. So the empiric danger, or the danger of using the empiricism, is that you will wait until the dollar is suddenly not money to say, oh, well, I guess it wasn't money after all. But if with logic, you can see into the future a little bit. You can deduce where you'll be going, and you don't have to wait for the facts to present themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so on that's what we have to keep in mind, and in your heart when that day hits. There's going to be some kind of massive deflationary day, and everything is going to go down except for the dollar, very, very briefly. And it's that day that you have to prepare yourself for, because we're saying it's going to happen. I don't know how far gold and silver are going to fall. I just know that they will. And then the next day or in 2 days, they'll go in the opposite direction. And I do think that's going to be the end game, right? There's going to be no stopping it after that, because they're just going to have to keep printing and printing and printing.
The demand for dollars on that day will be just absolutely white hot. I covered this in my video on what a deflationary crash looks like. It will be absolutely white hot, like no one would believe. Physical dollar. I'm talking about paper dollars, because your bank accounts are. If they let it slide, if they don't get out in time, you're talking about your bank accounts closing, your landlord knocking on your door demanding rent right now because he's got bills to pay. I mean, you're talking chaos if they don't get the dollars printing.
Well, I can pin a number. I can pin a number on how, if theoretically, which is not going to happen, if theoretically Powell just slammed the doors and said, no, we're just going to let it happen this time, then gold would go back down to $35 an ounce, and silver would go down to a 15 to 1 ratio, right? So 35 divided by 15. That would be silver. So it would look like silver's going way down. What's 35 divided by 15? Two point something, like 2.2, something like that. And then you say, oh, well, silver only $2.20 an ounce. Yeah, but the prices of everything have completely collapsed, and the purchasing power goes into gold and silver either way, regardless of what the numbers are. Right.
In the world where silver is $2.2 an ounce, or it's $2 an ounce. Yeah. Then eggs are 15 cents a dozen or something. It's not, it's gonna, and there won't be any dollars that in this crash if they let that happen, there will be no dollar. You will have to go to the store and pay with silver because there won't be any dollar unless you stash some dollars. but you will not be able to go to a bank or anywhere and get $1. In fact, if you go to a store, they probably won't have any dollars in the till. Like you will have to use something else because there won't be any. And if anyone who's lucky enough to have dollars will be using those dollars to pay off the debt, because that debt, what is there? I mean, how much debt is there per dollar? There's hundreds of dollars of debt compared to each dollar in print, right?
Well, are we talking about all private debt?
Yeah.
You can go to US debt clock. I can check
it. It's something disgusting. I know. Yeah.
Yeah. US debt clock.
34 trillion.
That's just the national debt. That's just the public debt. If you're talking about all the debts between people that are stacked on top.
Oh yeah, we're also talking about the government. Like if the Fed Act doesn't print, the government's going to default. All the military bases are going to close in a day, and everyone's going to come home. Like,
okay, so we have here U.S. total debt. I'll share the screen. Hold on. Share screen, and it's right here. U.S. total debt is 103,650 billion. Sorry, no, it's 103,650 billion dollars. So that's nice.
Lord. Anyway, so yeah, sorry, we're actually getting off topic here because we started with the logic versus empiricism.
Versus empiricism. Okay, you want to talk about that, so you kick it off.
Well, I want to throw a question at you, if I may. So if I come to you and I say, I already know the answer, but you're better explaining it than I am, I think. So if I say, Rafi, look, cryptocurrency has all the makings of money. It's rare. It takes effort to get it out of the ground or to mine it. Right? It takes effort to mine it. So we're putting energy into it, and it's a representation of the energy we put into it. It has a finite quantity, especially Bitcoin. Some of them do inflate, but Bitcoin is inherently deflationary. And let's see. It's hard. It's impossible to duplicate, like, because of the decentralized network, right? It has all the safety protocols in place so that it can't be stolen. I mean, you can have your wallet stolen, but they can't do it without knowing your keys, right? So it's and it's fungible, right? You can break it up into lots of different points. And we've used it as money. I personally have bought things with Bitcoin. So I've used it as money. It acts just like money in all these ways. Why is it not money? Where's the logical? Why does logic lead you to determine that it is not money?
Because it has to go back in time, has to index itself to something that already exists, right? You can't just when any government or any group of people wants to exchange things with one another, they need to use something that has a value already, right? So the very first exchange that ever happened in the world between two human beings who decided, instead of killing each other, they're going to trade with each other, right? That was one thing for another thing. This guy wanted that thing, that guy wanted this thing because he wanted to use that thing. That's how exchange began. And then gold took the place of that exchange because the first time anyone used gold to exchange something, the guy who took the gold wanted it because it was a thing, right? And he wanted that thing, and then he exchanged that for something else. And then he figured out that somebody else wanted that thing too, and this thing never changes. It's pretty good, right? So Bitcoin has all the properties that make a good money, except for the property that makes it anything, which is that it doesn't freaking exist. There's nothing there. Right? It has to exist first. People need to, it has to be, the exchange that you do now has to go back in time to the original exchange between human beings. The chain always has to be there, and that is in exchange for a thing that he wanted for itself.
So let's say the monetary collapse is really bad. I mean, really bad. And I'm talking civilization restart kind of bad. Oh, did you freeze on me, Rafi? I think we just lost Rafi. Uh-oh. Well, this is the Phil show now. Okay, so I'll carry this along until Rafi pops back in. So if you imagine the civilizational collapse is really bad, So I'm talking civilizational restart bad, Fallout, Fallout 3 level bad that people get out of their bunkers and they come out with their they emerge and the ashes of civilization are around us and everything's on fire. Excuse me. And then someone comes up and they have a USB stick with a bunch of cryptocurrency on it, a bunch of Bitcoin on it. And they go and they want to buy a can of irradiated tuna fish. So somebody else has a can of irradiated tuna fish they dug out of a destroyed house, and somebody else has a USB stick with cryptocurrency on it. I want you to imagine. Oh, there's Rafi.
Okay, I'm back.
All right, were you following me?
I lost you for for about a minute, but keep going. I'll pick up.
Well, what I said was, imagine everyone's in fault. Like, imagine the monetary collapse is really bad, really bad, civilizational reset bad, and all the people in bunkers emerge out, and one guy has a USB stick full of cryptocurrency on, full of Bitcoin, right? And somebody else has a can of irradiated tuna fish they dug out of a house, right? So there was the apocalypse, and someone found a can of tuna fish. It's glowing in the dark, but it is still edible. And you have a USB stick with 5 Bitcoin on it. When you walk up to and the monetary system's gone. This is Bitcoin's moment in the sun. This is the time to shine. When you walk up to that person, you say, "Excuse me, good sir, I would like to trade you 2 Bitcoin off of this USB stick for that can of irradiated tuna fish." Why will that person say no?
Because what can he do with the Bitcoin?
But because it's money. That's my pick. Bitcoin, this is Bitcoin's chance to become money, right? This is going to be money right now. Use this Bitcoin. Give me that tuna fish. Take these 2 Bitcoin. And you could go buy something else with it.
Yes, but money has to be a thing. It has to. You have to want the thing. Somebody has to want the thing for itself. Nobody wants Bitcoin for itself. But I think we're getting off track again. We're trying to talk about empiricism versus logic.
Yeah. Well, logically, I follow why it will not be money, because it's not a thing. It doesn't physically exist. The way I look at it, if the stacker, let's say Rafi comes out, and I did this on my show, I think, but when the stacker comes out like Rafi with silver, someone will take it. They'll say, "I will offer you this beautiful, shiny, round disc of metal that's made out of silver for your can of irradiated tuna fish." And they'll say, "Oh, that's very pretty. I will take it." Right? You don't have to say, "Oh, this will be money. This is money right now." You don't have to explain. You don't have to write a paper on why it's rare. It's mine. It's all this stuff. You can just say, "I give you pretty object. You give me food." Right? So that's where that happens, or that's where the trade occurs, right? And then over a period of time, it develops into a money.
Right. It's just a good. In terms of just more broadly speaking about empiricism versus logic, my teacher, the late great Bob Wenzel of Economic Policy Journal, he had this lecture once where
real quick, Rob, I think your debt screen is playing on the video.
Oh, okay.
Like the debt clock stuff.
Debt clock. Okay, let's get rid of that.
Yeah.
Why is it? I'm not even sharing the screen anymore.
Oh. It might have had something to do with the crash. I don't know.
Okay.
I was looking on the thing. The debt clock was like taking over 98% of the screen. Go ahead, continue.
Okay. So he had this lecture, and you can look it up. I think on YouTube it's Wenzel 2 + 2 = 4. And he explained the importance of logic versus empiricism in economics, right? So if for example, an empirical economist were to say to you that the minimum wage does not cause unemployment, because we see here in this city, they raised the minimum wage to $20 an hour and unemployment fell. So empirically, the minimum wage does not cause unemployment. But the problem is it does. And what's causing the unemployment to be masked is some other factor. Whereas all other things being equal, ceteris paribus, a raise in the minimum wage causes unemployment, because when you raise the prices for something above the market rate, you have what's the opposite of a shortage? You have an excess, and there's a better word for it. You have a surplus. Sorry, a surplus of labor, right? It's not all being employed, so that's unemployment. Now, it's like saying he said economics is saying that the minimum wage does not cause unemployment is like saying 2 + 2 = 5, and then trying to show you empirically that, let's say you have a city where everyone in that city believes that 2 + 2 = 5, right? So what? It doesn't prove that 2 + 2 = 4 because that's logic. It's not. It doesn't have to be empirically proven.
Sure.
Right. So the fact that the minimum wage causes unemployment does not have to be empirically proven. It just is. And the problem is there's no constants in human action. You can never have a ceteris paribus case where, let's say in physics, you can set up the exact controls and then test the variable. And that's how the scientific method works. You can't do that in economics because humans are not constant. They are acting things. There's no constants in human action. So you can never test these things. You can only logically say, well, if theoretically everything were equal, you can test it in your head logically and say, then what would happen, knowing the principles of human action, right? Knowing the principles of supply and demand. If you raise the price above the market price, you're going to have a surplus. There is no arguing that. And so this is one of the pretexts or the axioms of the Austrian School of Economics, that you cannot create equations for human action because they don't work. Right? So everything the Fed is doing it doesn't work. It looks like it is until everything blows up. So the same thing for if and when gold and silver crash on the deflationary day, whenever that is, when the repo markets blow up or whatever day it's going to be, when the reverse repos run out, exactly when, don't know. But when that happens, you have to know that gold and silver are still logically the money that everything else is based on right now. And that cannot be disproven empirically. You can't say, oh, look, people are using Bitcoin, so that's the real money now. Well, what you're not seeing is the entire pyramid on which Bitcoin is based, which is everything else that came before it.
So let me ask you this: if I have an empirical analysis and I have a logical analysis, right? So let's say you say you have a logical theory, and then all the empirical evidence is pointing to the exact same. It's pointing to the opposite conclusion over a very long period of time, right? How do you know your logic is not flawed? Because I've definitely argued with people before, and they're like, "You're being illogical," but it's because their belief in their logic is deeply flawed. So, I'm trying to think of an example I could use, but I don't. It's more about my personal life, so I don't necessarily want to get into that with my friends, you know. But so if the empirical evidence is going against your logic, how do you know your logic isn't flawed?
You just have to check it. I mean, because that's the parallel lines don't meet, right? You don't check your logic with empirical evidence. Like the empirical evidence can support what you're saying if your logic is true, but you have to know that if it seems that the empirical evidence is against your logic, there's something that you're missing about the empirical evidence. It's not that something you're missing about your logic. If you can deductively say that your logic is true through reason, right? Then there's nothing else that you can say other than something that I'm seeing is wrong, or I'm interpreting what I'm seeing wrongly, right? That's because you can't disprove logic. You can make a mistake in your logic, but you just go through it again. That's all. There aren't that many logical rules, right? Contradictions. I think Aristotle had 3. Contradictions don't exist, right? What is, what isn't, and contradictions don't exist. Or it's something like that. Something very simple. In one of my basic philosophy courses, you know, that's what it is. So we have plenty of empirical evidence showing that we're right. We have basically every piece of empirical evidence showing that we're right, and that is that every fiat system falls and fails in the exact same way throughout history. It takes different amounts of time, right? But It always happens 100% of the time. So we have 100% of empirical evidence on our side.
So why are people so like when I try and talk to like normal people about this, it's like, I mean, it's like talking to a brick wall. It's like history never happened. Is it just people have the attention span of a fruit fly and no one's looking back into seeing that every fiat currency ever written has failed?
Well, you can ask.
There's no such thing as a fiat currency. Every currency, every paper currency has failed, except for the ones that are currently failing.
You're asking a basic question of human nature. Why, if we know what reality is, why do we try to fight against it all the time? Why do we keep making the same mistakes? That's who we are. We keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again until we get it right, until some kind of eschatological heaven on earth takes shape. And I don't know, in biblical terms, God circumcises our hearts and changes the nature of who we are. Then we'll keep making the same mistakes. Why does communism keep coming back if we see empirically in the 20th century it killed hundreds of millions of people? Because, it was never really tried. Well, fiat currencies, they always fail. But we never really tried. I mean, we say the same things over and over again.
I guarantee they're going to blame us. They're going to say, we gave you a perfect currency detached from the dollar or detached from gold, and you guys all ruined it with your greed and avarice and your debt fueled orgies. You didn't, if you had been responsible with the money we gave you, then this would never have happened.
Okay, so they'll blame us, but then it doesn't matter who gets the blame. It matters who has the money. And the fact is that we will have the money and they won't, because they believed in this system and we didn't. So we have the money and they don't. And therefore we're in charge now. And that's it.
All right. Let's toss it up to some super chats. Or any final thoughts on logic versus empiricism?
No, let's go to the super chats.
Any chats, I guess. No super chats or regular chats if anyone has anything. I just realized we went like 45 minutes without any chat. So if anybody asked any questions, I apologize. We were too busy congratulating each other.
Yeah, ask them now.
On our wisdom
ask them now, and we'll take a shot at it.
Let's see. They'll turn on the gold, or the gold will turn on them. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. They will turn on the gold, or the gold will turn on them. So that applies probably to a lot of people, by the way. I would disgorge most of your hordes stacks. Gold is savings comparable to CD. Bitcoin is speculation comparable to new stock. The two are not comparable to each other. That's a good analysis. I would add one further. The Bitcoin is a speculation of nothing. It's literally a speculation on the value of absolutely nothing. If what about the energy used to put into Bitcoin? That doesn't give it any value.
No. Okay, so that's
I mean, I agree it doesn't.
I was going to object to what you said about gold having value because it takes effort to mine from the ground. It doesn't have value because of effort to mine it from the ground. That's a labor theory of value. That's Marxism, right? And Karl, Marxism is based on the assumption that value comes from the amount of work that you put into it. So that would mean, logically, if the value of gold comes from the effort it takes to get it out of the ground, that if a gold nugget fell from the sky, which is a good segue into your next topic, if a gold nugget fell from the sky, it would be worthless because somebody all you have to do is pick it up and there's no work. There's no work done to it. So the effort to mine Bitcoin is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Value is based on what the subjective theory of value, not the labor theory of value, right? And it's what someone will pay for the thing in exchange for it. It's not how much work went into it. Never is.
Yeah, I'm just throwing that out there for the empiric. I do agree with you.
Okay.
Let's see. Someone had something good. It was win, sell. Something about basically win, sell was the question. What I would say is if you're asking when to sell your stacks, you're not thinking of it correctly. You're going to be buying things with your stacks.
Yeah. Well, you would be selling them for stuff. When you can buy a bunch of stuff that you really want with your stacks, much more stuff than you have now, then buy it. I can pin a number on this. When the gold to it doesn't matter what the dollar value, if there even is a dollar value of gold is, doesn't matter what the dollar value of silver is, whatever that number is, if that ratio is anywhere near 15-1, sell your stacks for stuff. Buy things with your stacks. Don't buy dollars with them. Buy stuff.
All right. Dutch Libertarian says, question for Rafi or Phil. What do you think about Bix Weir with the silver and solar panels in the upcoming silver shortage? If the silver gets shortaged enough, people are going to melt down their solar panels to get back into their silver. So
Yeah,
that's what I think about it.
it doesn't. I don't really care about the industrial demand for silver. I'm not saying there isn't any, but I'm not interested in silver as a commodity. I'm interested in silver as a money, because when silver is a money, the demand for it is from every single person on this planet. Whereas the demand for silver for solar panels is the demand for the solar panel industry and the demand for people to buy solar panels. And that's much, much less than the demand for everyone for a money. Right. So it doesn't matter. I don't care about industrial demand. There's industrial demand for gold too, as like fillings or electronics, but it's so minor that it doesn't really matter.
I haven't seen much of Bix Weir. What I did see, I was a little bit out there for me. But if he's getting silver in people's hands, then that's all that really matters. As long as it's not, as long as it's not price gouged. So or not price gouged. What's the word? If he's not,
Numismatic.
yeah, or just pumping it up, like saying, "Hey, this silver is better than this other silver because of this reason."
Yeah. No, even numismatics are fine, but it's not money, it's art. Like,
No, just know what you're buying. Just everyone just needs to know what they're buying and go into it with open eyes. That's all I'd say. I think I mean there are stories of like old people kind of getting hornswoggled into buying numismatics when they probably would not have done so otherwise. But
any other questions, or do you want to talk about gold falling from the sky?
let's see. Yeah, let's go on to gold falling from the sky. Okay. So my question to Rafi, and I think I have a logical answer for this. And an empirical answer actually too. But let's say a meteor is heading straight towards Earth and it's made out of gold. It's gold nuggets, and they're all like gravity has compressed them together with a thin layer of dust between each nugget. So when it hits Earth's atmosphere, it breaks apart, and just gold is just falling down, and it lands harmlessly in the desert. No one gets hurt. Nothing is destroyed. But let's say an Olympic-sized swimming pool's worth of gold is now in the Nevada desert, and everyone drives and goes and picks it up, and the price of physical gold collapses to $35 an ounce. Does that solve the Fed's problem?
Ooh, does it solve the Fed's
Yeah,
problem?
because the Fed has issued a ton of notes on gold, and the future price is what, 35.42 an ounce, right? And the present price is 2,000. So if all the gold shows up, does the Fed's problem is solved, and the world continues as normal?
What do you think? I think maybe it does.
I thought so originally, but I think no, and here's why.
Okay.
The way I think of it is the way the Fed is working is that it's the tension between the present and the future value. So that's because people are holding the dollars and the bonds on top of the dollars because they expect it to buy a certain amount of gold at a certain price and a certain value. So you're getting $2,000 worth of gold in the infinite future at $42 an ounce, right? It's a futures contract on gold. If the present value of gold collapses down to 45, so there's no tension, then suddenly you're like, well, what am I holding? It'd be like holding notes for cubic zirconia instead of diamonds, right? You're like, well, what am I holding? I'm not holding notes for anything that's worth anything anymore. So that will cause a hyperinflation in its own right. It's not the value of gold. It's the tension between the future value and the present value that's supporting the system. And the system will collapse if this snaps like a rubber band, or if this snaps like a rubber band. If they ever get back into conjunction with each other, then the notes will collapse. And my evidence for this is Spain in the Renaissance, at the Age of Discovery, when they conquered the Aztecs and they conquered the Incas. Silver and gold just flooded into Spain, and they had what looks like, I mean, it's not inflation because it's not notes over it, but they had a monetary glut, and it looks just like hyperinflation. It looks just like an inflation.
Yeah, well, it's the same effect. It increased, instead of increasing the currency supply, it increased the money supply, which
the actual money supply. Right?
I mean, there is one difference. Like when you increase the money supply, the gold and silver supply, society is richer in the sense that it has more gold and silver to use.
Yes,
for whatever they want to use it for.
Alternative uses for it, sure.
Yeah,
but the use as the
when you have more paper, I guess you have more, firewood, you could say. But if you have more Bitcoin, you got more than nothing.
It's even worth less than paper because you can't even burn it. Yeah, it's just taking up space on a USB stick. So the when this if the golden asteroids was to land and the value snaps over here so that the two balance out, then I would expect everyone to suddenly say, well, these dollars don't buy. I mean, they buy gold at 35, but gold isn't worth anything anymore. So I better go buy other things real quick. Like psychologically, it'd be like, well, I better go buy stuff with it, right? And so you're still going to get that hyper.
Oh,
Now
okay.
people might, they might paint their cars in with physical gold paint because it's just, it's not worth scraping it off, for a thief to scrape off the gold paint.
Okay, so let me answer this in some other way, in a slightly different way, right? One of the things that makes gold a good money is that the supply of it increases basically in proportion to the population, more or less. Because what enables population to grow is technological advancement, being able to feed more people. Otherwise, population kind of like stays steady or falls because there's not enough food to feed people, or there's disease and pandemics, like real ones. But and then when we increase our technological know-how, we generally increase our ability to mine gold out of the ground better, more efficiently, find new areas. So one of the most important things that makes gold a good money is that its supply increases as the population increases. What would make gold a bad money is if it suddenly just like appeared out of nowhere randomly, right? Because then the supply of money would increase a lot faster than the supply of goods and services, and the whole price structure would go totally out of whack, creating the imbalances that we see that we see as an effect of fiat money, which is fooling people into thinking that the gold supply is higher than it actually is. Right? There's a whole bunch of pretend gold out there, right. And that's what's driving all of this malinvestment. So we'd see the same thing if actual gold were to fall from the sky in the way that the Fed is printing fake gold. Right. You'd have the same imbalances, and then they'd have to be corrected by basically gold being abandoned as the primary money for something a lot rarer, maybe like rhodium or palladium or something. Right? You'd have to go to a good that is produced at a similar rate as humans reproduce.
Okay, so yeah, he's saying free speech is saying if gold falls from the sky, then platinum would become the new money or something like that. Yeah,
something like that. Something close to that.
So it would ruin its monetary ability if it spiked that hard, possibly, or maybe gets reestablished at just at a lower price.
Yeah, and then you'd have the hyperinflationary collapse, or the hyperdeflationary collapse, whatever you want to call it, if gold falls from the sky and everybody has it now. And so then is there any? You'd have to rebuild. You have to restructure the economy to that new gold supply.
So there's no physical way I think the answer is yes. But there's no physical way in the universe to dodge the hyperdeflationary or hyperinflationary crash we're about to experience.
No. And if you go back to your original question, does it solve the Fed's problem? Maybe nominally it does, but it doesn't evade any of the actual physical consequences.
Yeah. On that cheery note, I'm just trying to think, like, is there anything that anyone could possibly do to have the soft landing, as they say? And I'm not talking about keeping the Ponzi going. I'm saying land the plane, everyone gets off, and we return to a more normal world without going through.
Nope. There's no way to do it. You can only build a gold fortress, and you're still going to feel it. But you'll be able to better handle the other side of it, hopefully. That's it.
All right. On that cheery thought, any final super chats? We blew through an hour. That was fast, Rafi. Yeah. Time flies when you're having fun. All right. You just lop off zeros, bring everything into alignment. Well, you can't technically do that until you're defaulting, I guess.
If my aunt had balls, she'd be my uncle. Yes. How is the child labor going? You still got inventory, I see. Oh, yes, the child labor is going well. And we sold 2 pieces. I'm shipping them out hopefully tomorrow. And if any of you want any of these, like not the big ones, I think we're going to keep the big ones. But if you have any requests, just send them to me at endgameinvestor@gmail.com, and I'll have my kids crochet for you or something.
Thanks, Rafi. I can't
Yeah.
afford gold. I guess I will buy junk silver, salt, and think silver is money too. Silver's
Yep.
water is life.
If you can't afford gold, buy silver. You'll be fine.
Let's see. Hard landing is necessary to rebuild this monetary debacle. Yes, I think we agree there. I'm always thinking, like, what if? I'm kind of like, you know what I feel like? I feel like Roy Batty in Blade Runner when he's talking to his creator, and he's like, what if we do DNA recombinator sequences, And the guy's trying to say, no, you got 6 hours to live. Like, there's nothing else to make.
The last thing I'll say before we sign off is that a soft landing, the equivalent of that would be, let's say, because inflation is theft, the people who benefit from inflation are stealing from the people who do not benefit from inflation. So you have this imbalance of a whole group of people that stole from most of the population. And a soft landing would be like them saying, well, we stole all of your stuff, and now just leave us alone and don't do anything about it and just start over from nothing. And the universe will never balance, but it will, because all crimes are paid for, all debts are paid. And when I say God won't let it happen, I'm not saying in the sense that a conscious man in the sky with a beard is going to punish the thieves, but in terms of how the universe is structured, these imbalances do tend to balance out, and that is the way that the universe was created by the intelligence behind it.
Frank Kavigi, we have a super chat. It says, rumor is China is turning on gold-backed yuan tonight on Asian markets open. I doubt that sincerely, because then they can't print anymore. And all their banks.
No, it's not going to be from anyone from China. It's not going to be any country going back to gold. I think that's all nonsense. It's going to be the people, not the country.
If China did back, because they do have a lot of gold, if they did back to gold and all their banks fail, why can't they institute? They can have their banks fail and then just start new banks with the gold-backed currency.
Yeah, but then they'd have to deal with all the riots of people that, in the banking industry, knocking down their door. They wouldn't survive it physically. They'd get lynched. Anyway, I got to let my kids downstairs.
All right.
Cooking in the cabin fever upstairs. And it's good talking to you, Phil. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And thanks for those who gave super chats. And we'll see you next week. I'm going to be putting up another video tomorrow. And it'll be about plumbing, I think. Something like that. All right.
Have a good one, Ravi.
Bye.